So first off, what do we consider virtual production? Really, virtual production is about the intersection of games technology, game engine technology, with all the sort of broad array of verticals. If you sort of want to boil that down to like a different way of looking at it, it's the convergence of the digital and physical experience. And when those two things collide, to borrow a phrase from my colleague David Weir McCall, it gives you this idea of this what ifs per hour. It's an accelerating experience when you can start bringing the physical and the digital together. We have long histories of purely physical production. We have a long sort of 25, 30-year history in computer graphics production. The two of them have had separate lives, separate processes, separate people involved. And so virtual production is really about mashing those people together. And what I think is really cool about what a lot of is happening right now is you're bringing together people that have never worked together. And, sort of from the computer graphics side, people that are very sort of detail oriented and being able to have the time and have the tools to massage all the pixels into exactly where they want to be. Then you have, the people that are being based in physical production that are very much, sort of collaborative and about being able to experiment, try on the day, an actor trying a different take on a line, a different camera composition, all these things that can happen on the fly because the incremental cost of these things is so much lower compared to computer graphics production where a lot of things need to be planned up front because there's a big cost for what you might sort of just leave on the cutting room floor. All right, all of this is then sort of built around this idea that real-time rendering is this. It's the fast decision-making iteration companion, right? All of this together, the interactive technologies, the sort of whole system around motion capture and all the things that can feed into it really mean nothing without this idea that it's all about real-time rendering, the feedback cycle that you can have. And over time, we've seen the way that people can actually get information into a game engine and interact with it has increased. The number of APIs and methodologies, hardware devices, chains of software that can be used to trigger activities within the engine, and all sort of, again, be presented through this real-time rendering. So we'll see that through this, there's a bit of an arc in terms of where things are going. And don't worry, I will definitely touch on UE5. But I will definitely refer you to a lot of the great videos that my colleagues have put together that goes into a lot of the detail about all the individual features. But we'll talk about more of the implications. And if you are currently experimenting with UE5, or if you're running an in-camera visual effects facility, we'll talk about what's ready, what's not at the end of this presentation. All right, so virtual production, lots of industries. And I think this is sort of really cool from both a business perspective and a career potential perspective for those of you that are students or involved with the students at the university. So anybody that either comes out with film and TV production knowledge or the games knowledge and has an understanding, the blend of the two of them, can pretty much find a career path in any of these kind of industries, which is pretty awesome when you consider that how sort of normally channeled these things feel, but the sort of proliferation of the technology through all these different industries has been pretty awesome. And I'd also like to point out that there's a lot of excited people already out in the world. The Facebook group for virtual production, Unreal Engine virtual production, is above 55,000 members already. So there's a lot of conversations, a lot of people that can provide feedback. And it's an awesome community. And this is the whole thing. We are talking about a global community of people. And it ranges from large studios to individuals. And so embrace it, be part of it. Remember that we all stand on the shoulder of giants and that we're at such a nascent part of the development that we really just need to keep sharing information. All right. So if you guys haven't already seen it, ledstages.info. Great website. If you're running a facility, please make sure you get yourself tagged. But the number of stages from 2019, 2020, 21, and now 2022 is just skyrocketing. The use and interest in in-camera visual effects specifically, motion capture for full CG productions, you name it, it is all rapidly increasing, and we'll expect to see that this map continues to grow. What I'd like to do right now is then take you through our 2020 reel, and then we'll contrast it against the 2022 reel, and you'll see sort of a bit of a difference.
We were really one of the early adopters for virtual production here in the Southeast, and we got excited about the technology because of the future of what it could be.
Ce que permet ce nouvel outil, c'est de donner de nouveaux moyens créatifs aux clients afin de pouvoir projeter leur production dans des univers qui jusqu'à présent étaient inatteignables en live.
Also das ist natürlich beeindruckend, was man hier sehen kann. Das ist, ich würde sagen, die Perfektionierung der Zukunft, diesem Know-how und dieser Digitalisierungsvariante ist das einfach ein neues Drehen.
Que no final da diária você acaba saindo, possivelmente, com um material praticamente finalizado, onde você não precisa consertar nada.
We're only scraping the surface of what this technology can do. The benefits are countless. And the day will finally come when we all will say, green screen, your services are no longer required.
Orca Studios is a Spanish-based company specialized in an integral solution for filmmaking.
My name is Alex Ducky. I'm a single frame figure in Milan, Italy.
All right. So, common theme there, lots of smaller stages, still a global footprint. Fast forward a couple of years, where we've seen things go is the scope of the productions. The number of large stages and the number of small and medium-sized stages has just skyrocketed. There are, productions and facilities now around the globe for basically productions of any size. And we've seen, sort of high-end TV shows, feature films, commercials, all being shot with in-camera visual effects. We've also seen a proliferation of the use of Unreal Engine and real-time rendering for full CG content. Lots of animated TV shows have sort of popped up in the last couple of years. Not only just there for the real-time rendering, but embracing motion capture for both performance and for camera. The ability for getting traditional filmmakers that know more about lighting involved. It's really sort of been a great cross-pollination that has sort of kicked off, and I think we're only going to see it continue. I was at the BSC Expo in London last weekend, and there's just a lot of cinematographers and gaffers that were just really excited to see where this goes, not only for live action filmmaking, but also where does their career path and what are the options for some of the younger, more tech-savvy cinematographers in full CG productions.
Hold up. Peekaboo, I see you. Peekaboo, I see you. Say hallelujah. Peekaboo.
All right. So I want to call out a few of the industries that are interesting for maybe somehow of their applications. I think live events is one that we've all sort of noticed. The concert tours are starting up again, live productions, theater, concerts overall on the rise. So Unreal Engine had already been building a space there. So for everybody that is learning or already knows Unreal Engine, this is again sort of another area that you can start to sort of find yourself, potentially being able to apply the skills and apply the technology. Here's an example of a production that actually happened a couple of years ago. So that was an example of a venue-based entertainment that made the use of game engine technology. There's been many art installations. I myself went to see the Van Gogh exhibit, which not only had projection mapped content, but also had an interactive VR headset-based exploration of his artwork and the areas that he sort of drew his inspiration from. So all across the sort of the breadth of live entertainment, game engine technology, immersive film-like experiences are being popping up everywhere, and they are a great opportunity, again, for students and for businesses. One of the things I wanted to sort of call out is that a lot of what you see in that space, or any of the spaces that you find people exploring the use of Unreal Engine, that's information that comes back to us that informs how we're actually sort of developing the software and what it actually means in terms of building out a great breadth of features that then sort of allow us to give you guys back more functionality that you can then sort of, again, put into these experiences. A great example of that is our DMX integration that started off pretty much in the idea of live production pre-visualization, but has over time been expanding into a bidirectional communications system within the engine that is currently then used on LED stages to provide console operators the ability to receive information from Unreal Engine and to give information to Unreal Engine, creating a very collaborative experience between the Unreal Engine artists and traditional lighting console operators. I won't play this full piece, but I just want to give you an example of how this sort of merge of technologies and users comes together. So this piece was actually programmed on an MA Lighting Grand MA2 console, pre-visualized inside of Unreal Engine. There's an actual behind the scenes on our YouTube channel, and then this is also sample content that you can download from our marketplace. All right, try to cut on the beat there. All right, so broadcast is another area where the traditional green screen, weather forecast, sort of person gesturing at the map that they can't really see because they're looking at a monitor in front that's doing the just the simple overlay graphic or underlay graphic. Weather Channel is a great example in the US of someone that is taking the idea of discussing weather and climate and trying to make it much more interactive, filmic, engaging to help communicate what it's really like to be sort of subject to the experience of weather and some of these terrible conditions that have happened in the past. So still green screen involved, but the difference is when you have camera tracking, when you have real-time compositing, and when you have Unreal Engine content, you can create a much more immersive broadcast that really does help sort of communicate the story in a much more visceral way. And so the idea of like having scaled content, showing what it's like for someone to actually be part of a flood, or what it would be like for them if they were experiencing it in person, is actually, quite a big step up from just reporting on it. Another area that we've seen an expansion is one of the projects that we did with our colleagues at Rocket League. So this is actually another piece of sample content, but it was actually built to help them achieve one of their broadcasts. So this is a broadcast package generating tool set where they were able to use Unreal Engine to deal with the vast different combinations of possible team matchups, their colorations, their logos, everything else, to ensure that they had the broadcast package on time. One of the things I actually love the most working at Epic, the fact that we're using the tools to, not just on Fortnite, we're doing test films, we're doing projects like that, so that we're actually putting them through the, sort of the crucible, as it were, before we even release them. And then we also give you the sample content. So if you guys have a need for it, please check it out, download it. We want to hear your feedback about it. So architecture has a long history with Unreal Engine. Twinmotion is a tool set that people are engaging with from everywhere from just visualization, rendered content, VR headset, reviews, collaborative sessions, show suites, you name it. We're finding that people are adopting Unreal Engine in very creative ways. Automotive, very similar, and one of the things to call out is that the act of actually creating 3D content, rendering that out to frames, using the lighting tools, using the movie render queue, all these are the same workflows that get applied to basically creating animated content or post visual effects workflows. And the breadth of, like I said, the breadth of the industries that are then giving feedback on these workflows will basically help us improve it for everybody. And as the saying goes, all boats rise with the tide. So expect that as things proliferate through all the industries, that everybody is going to see interesting opportunities come from it. Advertising is one where I think we've seen a lot of interesting engagement from people using Fortnite Creative, creating interactive experiences, mobile, and then also generating content. An interesting tidbit was that speaking with some of the stage operators here in London, the feedback is that when it comes to some of the large brand companies, they are actually requesting an in-camera visual effects LED wall-based bid as part of the a 3-bid package. So there's an awareness of the technology. There's an interest in the technology, not only from the ecological standpoint, because it's being pretty well proven that it's going to be more carbon, I wouldn't say carbon neutral, but it's going to have a better carbon footprint working on an LED stage, especially when you deal with the multiple market versionings of ads, things like that. So it's definitely an emerging area. And as filmmakers adapt to it and we sort of continue to improve the tools, we expect this all to increase. Now let's talk a bit about what are some of the aspects that everybody has access to that get leveraged in different ways. But again, take everything you see and then kind of think of how it could still apply back to architecture, automotive, filmmaking for live action, full CG work. It's all these sort of aspects come together for all the different people. So from one of our behind the scenes, this is from a recent film, and the idea that James Gunn is able to then basically work with a stunt performer in a motion capture suit to then direct the work, figure out the camera angles, even if that then goes on to a visual effects facility for them to then finish what the director is expecting to receive in the other side. It's a tight brief. There isn't sort of room for wiggle. Obviously, people have the opportunity to sort of contribute their own on top of it, but the ambiguity is gone, right? So as a business operator, as a creative, everybody knows what parts are fixed. They know where they can contribute, and it can shorten the actual production cycle, which is really important. And then we have tools for production designers, and they're another key sort of part of the equation for both full CG work and live action work that has been sort of part of the conversation for a long time. But things are really starting to heat up in the space. I was at a facility in London recently, and they were demonstrating some tools that they had built with Unreal Engine and HoloLens. Absolutely fantastic. It was really exciting to actually have this interactive display of a set on the desk in front of me, and not have this sort of vertigo of wearing the VR headset, just being able to look down, still see my feet, but look and see this tabletop size model. And we're not talking like sort of white card model that's sort of very scaled down. It was very massive, and you could really sort of take different positions, look through it, turn different pieces on and off. So for production design and collaborative decision making, virtual production tool sets, game engine technologies, and physical production, it's a beautiful blend. Cinematographers are going to be one of the people or groups that benefits from this the most. There's a lot of work that will go into the cinematography space. Everything from what's happening with LED panel production to physical light fixtures, but then also the workflows in the engine, and then with Lumen and Path Tracer, and then the workflows that we'll put around it to support the new opportunities that those provide. And you look at, with one of our tests that we shot for 427, how interactive this was. And one of the big deals with 427 that we've carried on into 5 was that these kind of interactive lighting changes could then be baked using the GPU light mass. What used to take overnight on a cluster of machines can be done in a coffee break on set. So you can respond to those creative itches. You can have those moments where your gut tells you that you need to change something, and you don't have to settle, because it's going to be, the case of in like a show like this, you're going to basically postpone shooting. You just wouldn't be able to. You couldn't write off those costs. So you can get what you want on the day, and that's really important. And it's not just about like moving lights around. It can be as simple as an exterior where you're changing time of day and the sun. It's sort of a lot of opportunities here. One of the things that has always sort of stood out from this is that it's the collaborative aspect. So here's an example from one of the initial tests that showed just exactly how the blend of the wall and the physical set. Now, it's not easy. It takes a lot of work to get it right between the physical and the digital teams to get that that perfect blend. It's no doubt going to continue to be a challenge, but as the sort of technology matures, as the workflows mature, as people learn how to design for that blend, then it will become just part of the common practices that people are well attuned to. One of the other aspects that came out of all of this was also the idea of the multi-camera workflows. So allowing productions with enough compute power and enough wall real estate to actually shoot with multiple cameras. And this really sort of increases, again, the production capability. We've already seen broadcasters looking at this. There's interesting technologies like the megapixel ghost frame and the Brompton frame remapping that allow for the potential of having multiple content or multiple cameras. So a lot of interesting developments across the whole space. Now I want to change gears a bit, and let's talk about how this applies to team size. There's an individual by the name of Corey Strasburger, and he does this project. He's got a YouTube channel called Xanadu, and he is a one-man band creating content on a 4 to 6 week schedule for his own YouTube channel by himself with a motion capture suit, Unreal Engine, and associated technologies, and it's absolutely fantastic.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Blue, and this is my alter ego, Corey. And together we have a YouTube show called Xanadu, starring yours truly.
Hello, what about me?
And it's all about building my virtual empire.
Well, all I see is Corey doing all the work and you having all the fun.
I think building an empire is all fun.
For you, absolutely.
Anyways, you guys have a good spotlight interview. We're going to go punk some astronauts on the space station for our next TikTok video. Blue, out. All right, cut.
All right, so Corey's work is absolutely fantastic. And again, like one artist working at the machine. So any of you that are in the audience that are students, and again, learning either from the game side or the film side, but you're involved in the project that's bridging the two, realize that if you want to be the next, Spielberger or other sort of auteur filmmaker, the tools are in front of you to like basically build your style and explore, filmmaking and production. And you don't need, a math, like you can just do it yourself. That's what it really comes down to. All right, I want to rewind almost 3 years. And I keep coming back to this short in a lot of my presentations because I think it was a real pivotal moment. It was this film Rebirth by the Quixel team just before they joined Epic. And again, 2019 era, but combining their Megascans with Unreal Engine at the time, which is nowhere near the Unreal Engine that we have now, let alone with Unreal 5. They created a piece that was, again, done by a small team, but photorealistic. And so what does it mean for everybody in terms of your businesses and for the students and filmmaking and all the industries in general when you can create photorealistic worlds and create basically film, TV, whatever it is your story you want to tell, and do so either stylized, but you're not actually kept back from photorealism. So I'll quickly play this and then we'll move through.
Adaptation. The ability to learn from past experience. The use of knowledge to alter their environment. These virtues defined our creators and drove them to the brink of destruction. But we cannot exist without them. We must save her. What of our creators exists within us? Humanity has always had the potential to recognize its flaws and choose a better way. Can we save humanity? Was bringing her here the right choice?
So as you can see, that movie was, basically, depending on screen calibration and you're looking at, it's photoreal, and it definitely passes more than the squint test. But what's incredible is that even if the team took advantage of slightly non-real-time, frame rates for the final frames, the actual tool sets, as you can see, are still interactive in the course of production. So all the choices that they want to make, again, they can, they were able to, sort of cycle through lighting, layout, all the, sort of the steps along the way, the use of the virtual camera to record what was going on, or particular shots with the shake there. All of it completely interactive. And I think that's, the huge part of this. So again, like getting back to that live action experience, you can have those sort of great aha moments. You can just say, I'm going to sort of take a moment and just try something out. I'm going to play. I'm going to explore. And that is the huge benefit of, combining the game engine technology with the physical experience. That led into next generations of filmmaking. So again, this is from our test that we did for 427. That full background there is all digital. It's not too far in front of the actress before things stop. There were points and shots in this little test project where we were able to recreate her torchlight up onto the full CG wall and use motion tracking so that the actress's movement guided a digital flashlight into the digital environment, which was an effect that has been seen by many filmmaking teams and deployed on basically projects, sort of small, medium, and large. All right, so what I'd like to do now is take you through, sort of where did this all start in terms of this current trajectory we're on. Unreal Engine 5, the idea was really to just take a generational leap, embrace the fidelity that could be achieved, where Unreal Engine might have been able to sort of be cranked up or sort of very carefully fine-tuned in terms of your render budget. And this is something that is, I think, different or a new concept to a lot of folks that have come from full CG production, is this idea of the render budget being measured in milliseconds, that you have to make very precise choices. So Unreal Engine 5 with Lumen and Nanite was really about trying to sort of remove some of the constraints of that. Doesn't mean that doesn't exist, but it means you go a lot farther and you get a lot more photorealistic result before you hit that point where you're like, oh, I've got to consider how I start optimizing. So let's take a trip down memory lane and look at how this was first launched to the world. And as someone that has a background in lighting design, when I saw that, it was incredible just seeing all the sort of GI bounce light moving around in real time. Cinematographers absolutely are super keen on seeing where Lumen can take them. Nanite brings in a lot of ability to scale up. Now let's look at what people have been using Unreal Engine to do through the various preview release cycles. So very exciting to see where all that goes. Now, for those of you who weren't aware of the collaboration between Warner Brothers Interactive Entertainment and Epic Games, we made an example called the Matrix Awakens that tied in with the Matrix film. What this really was our way of dogfooding through the technology as we developed it, and then also providing everybody an exciting sort of example. So this was released for the Xbox and PlayStation 5 initially, tied with the launch of the movie. But now that UE5 is actually out, we've taken the metahumans, the cars, and the city itself and released that for sample content that you can use on the PC. And it's been absolutely exciting seeing some of the videos of sort of digital cinematographers and traditional cinematographers leaning into it, people exploring what the technology means for them. I saw one example where somebody added a Sonic the Hedgehog with all the in-game mechanics to the world of the city. So people are doing all kinds of amazing things with it and exploring what it means. So let's take a look at what's possible, and then we'll talk about some of the technologies. And it's worth noting that all of this was rendered and captured from a PS5. Not some of the best driving moments, but it does clearly illustrate the crumpling techniques that we're putting into the game. And the absolute scale that this can run at. All right, so here's the actual cinematic section from the experience, and then we'll look at an actual in-game gameplay, just to sort of carry on through the thread of how this is all running in real time. There aren't scenes, there aren't pre-rendered. This is all various experiences running in real time. So this is one of the scripted moments. But the implication is that the variation that people would see in video games between cut sequence and video game, or the choice to use video game engines to do the cut sequences at the loss of the quality that was capable with offline rendering, basically that's going away now. And that technology can be applied to pre-visualization. It can be applied to all the other sort of industries and workflows that leverage the same technologies. All right, here's the interactive gameplay part.
Say no more.
And you can see from the sort of aiming reticle that this is sort of the interactive part where the player is actually trying to take out the agents.
My pleasure.
All these effects and everything else running in real time.
Of course they have a helicopter.
Fluid simulations playing back in real time. All right, so Nanite. Obviously, the biggest thing about this is being able to take high resolution assets, being able to import them, and being able to utilize them. Having control over some of the controls of how it's making its choices, but effectively the precise placement and management of LODs is something that you don't have to do when you're using Nanite. Some of the benefits to virtual production is that in UE5, it's supported with the path tracer and GPU lightmass. This is a new workflow, so if you're putting this into an LED wall scenario, please do note that we do consider UE5 for most virtual production, well, anything but games. We are just warning everybody that we consider it beta software. But but it doesn't mean that you can't use it. It just means please put in the respectable amount of due diligence to make sure that the choices and the projects you're working on, you've done a vertical slice test, and you know that this is all, you're not going to get backed into a corner, because we would not like that to happen for you. But Nanite is something that you should definitely be exploring in terms of your content production. And like I said, it's compatible with GPU Lightmass and the Path Tracer, as well as Lumen. And the virtual shadow maps is how you're seeing some of these really great crisp shadows. Chaos is now part of the engine, but this image also is a great illustration of what it actually looks like to Nanite when it is actually sort of calculating. You can see how each geometry is kind of being diced up on the fly into the appropriate amount of geometry for the texture detail. Correspondingly with this sort of increased texture detail or increased geometric detail, we're happy that virtual textures, so UDIMs, for those of you in the visual effects space, are should now be considered supported. So you should be able to bring in high resolution multi-UV set texture maps to match against the corresponding dense mesh. Please flag if you have any issues. Lumen is obviously the real-time GI and reflection system. There are compromises compared to path tracing. Mirror-like reflections are not yet on par with something like a path tracer. So there are going to be compromises along the way. What I do want to make clear is that for in-camera visual effects, LED wall-based productions, Lumen is not considered ready. You may find that with particular content that it works fine, but you should please note that it will present artifacts with the right kind of content. And once you have those artifacts, there is no solution to make them go away. We are working on that solution, and we do have sort of a remedy in sight, but that will probably not be ready until about Q4 of this year, when the subsequent 5.1 release comes out. So Lumen is ready to be used for full CG movie render queue based workflows, and there's people like all the reel I showed you, that's what people were using. But for the LED wall based productions, Lumen, if it works for you, you're lucky. I would not build and promise this to productions. World Partition is something that I think we will increase our support for it with the in-camera visual effects tool sets. The benefit of World Partition is basically just what you see with the city, being able to create massive worlds. So if you have a driving shot and you want to create a few kilometers of space that you can then just keep on driving your car along, and you want to be able to drag your in-display actor so your car is stationary but the world is moving past it. This is going to be your ticket, instead of having to sort of either figure out how do I go back and forth across a small section, or how do I cycle my world past. It's going to be a pretty amazing thing for virtual production, and CG content, the in-camera visual effects, and for games. Temporal super resolution, more probably sort of something for A, games, and B, full CG content. That doesn't mean that it won't have applications on an LED wall, but this is the idea of being able to actually render at, say, HD and display as 4K. It has sort of that level of sort of upraising ability, and it gives you that extra frame rate, because if you're only technically calculating at HD but you're presenting as 4K, you're buying yourself some frame rate, which you can then use for the other technologies. Niagara, the particle system, as you saw with some of those explosions, there's a full fluid system in there now. So that is currently expensive. There are ways to sort of cache that. There's tutorials on our developer website that you can follow along. But it does mean that authoring fluids for games is on the horizon. Authoring fluids in engine for entertainment production, absolutely on the horizon. So you can basically choose, like, when do you need to step out into a tool like Houdini versus when you keep it all in engine. Metahumans, obviously, I mean, there's hundreds or thousands of them inside of this sort of playable example, and the technology will continue to evolve. And you can see, based on some of the examples that are floating around on the internet, with the right lighting and camera treatment, you can create, very photorealistic looking humans. SIAI was what was powering all the traffic. So that was being live calculated in this example. So the implications for this get into what does it mean when you're doing digital crowds for entertainment production, for film, for TV episodic work. There's a future probably where having digital extras on a LED volume is not that far away. So, lots of exciting technologies in here. The rule processor was basically a custom bit of kit that was built out to take the point cloud scattering and the rules-based workflows that were used in Houdini to then design and shape the flow of the city. But to be able to then take that and apply all the nano meshes to it based on the metadata that was on those point clouds that were built in Houdini. Meta Sounds just gives you a much more interactive audio experience. And finally, just for, extra little sort of peek behind the curtain, these are some more production stills that were rendered again directly in engine. And you can see with the right photographic and sort of cinematography sort of hints of depth of field, composition, and lighting, you start getting really realistic. And again, this is all running in real time. So the future is with us, and we can start dreaming big about what does this actually mean for all the applications of how people use this technology. And for those of you that are students at the university, this just means that you're getting started at an amazing time. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your attention. And let's try and get some questions answered. Perfect. Okay. Oh, here's gentlemen. Yeah.
Hi, Jordan. Thank you for this good presentation. By background, I'm an urban planner. And this all looks quite fascinating because it can bring this whole new era of urban planning. In how many years do you think it will be available for almost a standard urban planner to work with this kind of software to visualize cities before building it?
Well, I think any new software is going to require some acclimatization. We have a technology called DataSmith that is part of Unreal Engine. And DataSmith is basically designed to interact and do live updates with CAD data. So no doubt you're going to have to invest some time in learning the software. But I think you focus first on how does the DataSmith technology get from whatever you're using in MicroStation, whatever it is, for your data set into Unreal Engine. And then you need to sort of focus on what are the small steps that you want to build on in terms of, do you want to take a gray shaded model and then just do a lighting study using Lumen or the path tracer. Another great technology is also Twin Motion. And then I'm happy to say, though, that the architecture, urban planning, that side of things, there's a lot of resources on our website that you can also sort of dig into. And we also have dedicated teams that service those industries. So when in doubt, if you can't find what you're looking for online, reach out to us and we'd like to guide you to the right place.
Okay. You mentioned that Lumen is not ready for in-camera VFX, but could you elaborate?
Any other questions? Don't be shy, guys. I think we got a few more.
Okay. Could you elaborate on those artifacts and when they're most likely to appear? So, because obviously we want to try it, so we can maybe avoid those artifacts. And just as a follow-up, the temporal super resolution, is that actually ready for in-camera VFX?
Okay, so the first question is, all right, so the Lumen artifact is that you start seeing, it's almost like Zed fighting between things. Lumen works on this idea of the Lumen cache, and because in in-camera visual effects you have an inner frustum and an outer frustum, the current challenge is that each of them is trying to update that Lumen cache, and so you get it fighting, and that's where you get these sort of it's almost like I said, Z artifacts, like you would sometimes see if things were too close to each other and you had sort of precision errors. And in terms of that side of it, you don't get that with the movie render queue. So if you're trying to render something straight out, simply because it's not having multiple views that are trying to then update that Lumen cache at the same time. As far as the temporal super resolution, the team did test that on an LED wall in LA. I do not remember anybody flagging any artifacts, but again, it's one of those things. If you're going to put UE5 onto a wall with clients, test. You know, this is the stage we're at, where this is such a new block of technology. We can't possibly cover all the various combinations of hardware, software, content that would go into a system. So, you know, we just advise caution. The one thing that we are confident on is that all the workflows that you would apply in Unreal 427, as used in UE5, those function as expected. So it's basically as you start to add on new things, that's where your element of risk comes. But we expect all that will stabilize, and we do have plans for 2 hot fixes before the summer to address any issues that do come up.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation and congratulations with the Unreal Engine 5 release. So we are running the virtual production facility located in Riga, and we're planning to build a couple more across the Europe because we believe this is the future of the media content production. Our background was the classical film production, so we were shooting on the locations, and what we can do now and the shooting in the studio, exterior location is amazing. But the main problem that we're facing right now, that the filmmakers, the producers, directors are afraid to make this step into the virtual production. So question will be, is the Epic planning to do some kind of additional promoting this kind of technology to the filmmaking world? Because we're thinking this technology could be affordable for any kind of production, not only huge budget, but for medium and small budget projects. So we would like to attach more film producers and filmmakers to this technology. Is there any kind of tools that Epic will promote this kind of technology? Thank you.
Okay. I can say absolutely. We ran a program with the Tribeca Film Festival. We've run programs in New York separate from Tribeca. There's sessions coming up at the Cannes Film Festival. So we're absolutely through different means and different, sort of public engagements and various sort of conversations. We've got a team of people that sort of go out and they're speaking with producers as well to help them come to understand the technology. Specifically when it comes to things like LED wall-based productions, we did a study recently that highlighted sort of the disconnect between stage operations, what we could all refer to as virtual art department companies, and sometimes the lack of, and then producers and filmmakers and their understandings of the technology. So, we are trying our best to help people sort of gain exposure, understand the benefits, understand the risks. I spoke with one producer, and I think, sort of what you were probably touching on was she was working on a major broadcast piece here in the UK. Her feedback was going into the shoot, she has a comfort level in traditional techniques. She knows what could probably go wrong. She knows exactly what they'll do about it. And she has, a plan B and a plan C. When it comes to the in-camera visual effects, LED wall-based productions, so many new variables. And so that is where, one of the things that we're trying to address is like that sort of, what do they understand of how things can go wrong, when they go wrong, so that people aren't just kind of waiting around for folks at the brain bar to kind of go, okay, we need 10 minutes and why. And I think it's the unknown that we need to address, because people understand things go wrong and people need 10 minutes here and there. It's the understanding of, is this a one-off? Is this a random thing? Is this going to keep happening? What are the solutions? So I think it's also about stage operators and producers building over time that trusted relationship, so that they know that when something goes wrong, that there's a reason why and that there's a solution for it. But I hope that, addresses your question.
Hi, I have a question because what we have been shown that which are the capabilities of a Unreal Engine that are evident. It's wonderful, it's incredible, but it's been some years that like on the hardware side, we've reached Moore's law, so we're not able anymore to double the amount of computation we can have on a machine. So what we're working on is on the architecture and on the algorithms to improve what we can do. That being said, what we've been shown is incredible, but how do you plan to evolve furtherly this, given the hardware limitation we're having, also the silicon crisis? And so how can we work instead on the other two factors, so on the algorithm and architecture for Epic and Unreal Engine?
Well, I think, the I guess the clearest example is that we've just gone through a cycle of innovation where we've basically broken new ground in terms of how real-time rendering is taking place, specifically when it comes to things like Lumen and Nanite. As we get more and more examples of how people are using it, as our rendering team can come to understand the details of how the system responds in all the various scenarios, that's where we have the opportunity to actually go and optimize. So I don't think the improvements in terms of what's possible, frame rate, scene complexity, things like that, are necessarily bound to hardware advancements only. This is the first generation of Unreal 5. It's 5.0. We just left 4.27. So, there's, a lot of innovation that can happen. And also groups like NVIDIA are not only innovating on their hardware side, they're innovating on the software side. So drivers and things like that. there's a reason why we recommend NVIDIA hardware, because we leverage their sort of APIs to then sort of build on top of things. So there's a lot that I still think can happen, and I think if we had a time machine and we can come back from looking at 5.27 back to 5.0, we'll see a big change. And if we sort of do what people always do with currency and inflation when they're comparing production budgets and other things, we'll see that there's going to be a large scale improvement over time. But it's just going to take us, it's just that time.
Okay, let's thank Jordan for his presentation.
Yes. Well, thank you everybody for your time. And if you have any more questions or just want to keep in touch, please reach out on LinkedIn. I wish I could be there to network with you in person. But, fingers crossed, everything will work out for next year. And have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.